Hi guys. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a very useful feature of Claude Code, which I don't think enough people understand and they use it on a daily basis, and that is subagents. So in this video, what you will understand is what a subagent actually is, where you should use the subagents, how to build your own subagents, because this is very important. Building your own subagents is like copying your workflow and letting Claude know how exactly do you work. At the end, I'm going to give you a starter pack which you can download, which has few subagents which I'm using on a daily basis in my day-to-day development. So before that, let me show you the problem that the subagents actually solve, because that's the whole reason they exist, right? So you probably had this happen. You're using a very long session and the responses from Claude Code slowly starts getting depleted, right? Claude starts to forget some stuff, and we term that as Claude is hallucinating. So the point is, after a certain context window fill up, the response from Claude gets little vague, and sometimes it just start making things up. It start assuming things. Every search result, every test run, or every file read is actually adding stuff into the context window. The model doesn't need all of them. Model needs the gist of them, which is important for the context. And as a rough rule, the context window, if it is more than 60%, quality starts to really drop. And if you start searching about that, you will find we have research papers, which have correlated the context window size with the quality of the model. But the real question is, how do you get all this heavy lifting? Because you might have to search for the stuff on internet, you might need to run the test cases, but how exactly do you handle all of this stuff? That's why you need sub agents. They will handle all this stuff for you in a separate session, so that the context window of a main session doesn't bloat up. Let me just go to the next slide. So here I'm giving you an example of how does a main session and a sub agent work. So you can see that we have a main session with some context window already filled up. So let's say we have some task, for example, searching internet on some particular topic. Instead of giving it to the main session, we can always ask it to do it in sub agents, right? Sub agent will have its own context window, will have its own context size of, let's say, 1 million. It can run the stuff in its session and it will report back all the summary, which you can see in this diagram as well, right? So when the subagent is executed, it just gives the summary back. And that is what your main session needs. Only the refined knowledge which can stay in the context. And if you're a Java developer, I think one thing you will understand is multi-threading. Like your main thread will always be there, right? The main thread spin ups the different virtual threads, which gets back, once the task is completed. So this is exactly, what the main session and the subagents are. Subagents have their own life cycle. They are triggered from the main session, and whenever they are done, they report back to the subagent and their life cycle finishes there. And now let's move on to the reasons, why you should be using subagents. So the first one is keeping the context clean, which I just explained to you, right? All the noisy work, like, reading different stuff which doesn't belong to the main session, that can be done outside the main context window. And the second one is lock down its tools. So for example, here what I mean is giving the agent only the permissions that it needs. So let's say code reviewer, right? I can create one sub agent which can only do code review. It cannot do the code changes, and it can just do the code review, submit its feedback to the main agent, so that only main agent can do the code changes. Only main agent can fix whatever code review agent reported back. So this is a very important thing, and you might need it, when you are running production systems. For example, if there's a database agent which is running, you don't want database agent to do any write operation. So that agent will have only read only access, and they only perform their task to read some stuff and report that back. The third is run a cheaper model. And I guess, this is really important. Let me explain you the reason. For example, think about it. You have a really big code base, or let's say you work on one task, you need to read 50 PDF files. So think about it. If you are on a pro plan, reading 50 files and then processing those files, I think you will exhaust your 5 hours limit very soon. So what you can do is you can trigger a sub agent which can use the Haiku model, which is a cheaper one, and that model can basically read all the file and provide all the gist for that. So yeah, this is very important to keep your cost, in checks. And the fourth one is reuse it as a specialist. Yeah, I mean, you can save your agent once, you can reuse it, and you can run it several times. So this is the example that I gave, code review, right? Or maybe migration specialist. So you can write one agent which has some predefined knowledge that has access to particular tools, and you can always use those agents. You can share among your team, you can share among people, and they can also start using that. So yeah, that can act as your specialist for some other task. So we will go through all four reasons and the practical examples in this video. Let me give you a real example from my own work, because I think this is where it really clicks. So you know that keeping documentation is very important, and we generally do the changes and we forget to update the documentation, which actually bites us later. And that can be an example. A README file can be an example, right? So you create a README file, you do some changes, and your README becomes outdated, right? So nobody wants to do that boring job, right? And I made a little sub agent that just does that. I just invoke that agent and it updates my documentation and it updates my readme file. So what I generally do is, like, whenever a session is done, I just invoke that sub agent into my Claude Code main session, and I just say that, run my doc writer, and it triggers a new session and it tries to update everything. And my main session is never filled with all of that. And here's the nice part, because writing docs is a very trivial thing, right? It's a fairly mechanical job. I don't need to burn my tokens with Opus, right? So I'm gonna show you what the doc writer is and which model I'm using. I'm using Haiku for that. So let me open my Claude and show you that. So this is my session, which you can see, and I have one app, which is a URL shortener here. So I can just say run doc writer. So it's gonna trigger the doc writer agent, which will just update my documentation. You can see that, right? It's launching the doc writer agent, and it's gonna check the project state. And just for the demo purpose, I have kept my README as kind of empty, and so that it can actually does some stuff. So you can see that we have now doc writer agent running. So there is one main agent, there's one doc writer agent, and doc writer is writing docs for the shorter project. So you can see that here doc writer is running. It does show the time for which it is running and the tokens it is consuming. And you can see that my main context window is not depleted, it's just sitting at 4%. And you can see that this is permission which is shown to me. This is given by my doc writer agent. If I just go there and hit enter here, I will see what my doc writer is doing. So yeah, you can see that all these tokens which are coming, these are from my doc writer agent, and my main agent is just sitting there, and it is just showing me that doc writer is actually writing the docs and it is the agent. And if I do control B, I don't know what it is doing. And now you can see that the agent reported back to the main agent. Okay, now you see that doc writer agent is running in the background, and it has told the main agent that it will do these 4 steps. So it's still running in the background. You can see that it's been 2 minutes and 17 seconds. 63,000 tokens are being used here, but my main context window is not used. And this doc writer agent is like polyglot. It doesn't matter that you are using Java or Python or TypeScript, it can handle everything. And I will show you what this agent is in the next slides. This is what it is doing. So it's running at the end of my session, and it is using Haiku, which is very cheap. It writes the docs, and once it is done, the main agent will get back the summary. Claude Code does give you agents which are already pre-built into Claude Code, and you don't need to build the agents to start using them. So the main one is called Explore. It is fast, it is read only, and it uses Haiku so that it doesn't burn your context window. And then there's a plan which gathers all the context. Whenever you run anything in plan mode, it invokes plan agent. And then there's a general multi-purpose agent which handles a bigger multi-step job. And nowadays, whenever you run anything in Claude Code, it shows you at the bottom the agents being used. So let me give you a real demo for this. I can just go to my Claude Code and let me just clear everything from here. Let me invoke, let me see how these agents are invoked. So I'm just gonna say, can you check if there is any retry mechanism in my URL shorter? Yeah, so I just asked a vague question, right? It has to go and read some stuff in the code, and let's just see what it does. So probably it'll invoke a new sub agent. Yeah, you can see that, right? Explore here. So Explore is the general agent which I showed you here. So it searches your code. So it actually is searching the find retry mechanism in the URL shortener. So this is what it is doing, and you can see that here, right? Here the main agent is where we see the some of the things from the Explore. So Explore agents tool invocation and logs are coming here, and I can just do control B here and we will not see anything, but we will see that there's a background agent which is running, and you get the output that the main agent has launched a search agent to scan the whole repo for the retry logic, and it'll report back once it is finishes. But if you want to see what Explore agent is doing, you can just go down or press the down arrow button and press enter, and this is what Explore is doing. It is finding the retry mechanism, the URL shortener. So yeah, this is how the agents are in the existing Claude Code. I think by the time it is doing something, I can move on to the next one. So the next one is how you can build your own agent. So I can give you one example, the doc writer, which I already have shown you. And the fastest way to understand the subagents is actually you need to build your own subagents. And I'm sure 90% of the people, they have not created any agent in Claude Code, and I'm going to teach you how you can do that, right? An agent file is actually a .md file which you write it in the .claude in your project level or at the user level. So you can see that, you need four things. You need a name for the subagent, you need the description, you need to mention the model it uses, and the tools. So here in this example, you can see that we have doc writer, which I invoked. I gave you the demo for that. And what it does is it documents the files that we have changed, and it doesn't matter which language it is, polyglot, and the model, which is haiku, which is very cheaper, and then the tools, read, write, and edit, right? Because we need to write the files, so it needs the permission. Let me show you how exactly the agents are. How do you understand if any agent is running, how many agents are present in your system, and then we will create an agent. I'm going to show you that. So you can see that Claude got back, but I'm going to clear the session just to give you an example of the agents. So what you need to do is just run /agents. What it's going to give you is the running agents and the library. So currently you see that we don't have any agents currently running. If I had explore agent or docstring agent running, I could have seen that here, but we don't have any, right? So I'll press the right button and you can see that I have the library. So I have the user level agents, which are like, backend architect, database architect. You can see that the model is inherit here. So whatever the sessions model is, and then there's Opus. And then there are project agents, which I am using. So I already told you, like, the doc writer, and then we have accessibility checker, which is using Sonnet, code reviewer, commit writer, test writer. And then there are some plugin agents. Then there are built-in agents, which I've already covered, right? Explore, general purpose, Claude Code Guide. And in the library, if I just press arrow button down, I can select any of the agent. For example, doc writer. If I enter here, you can see the options, run agent, view agent, edit and delete and back. So if you go to view agent, you can see exactly the details about this agent, right? So I'm just gonna press escape here and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna click on create new agent. So this way you will be creating a new agent. Okay. So here there are two options, project and personal. So if you want to create agent at the project level, select the first option. If you want the agent to be available in all the Claude Code session, irrespective of the project, you can select the second option. I'm going to select personal here. And then there are two options, manual configuration, generate with Claude. I would say 99% let Claude handle the agent creation, just select the first option. And now you describe some details. So for example, I can say that, I want the agent that looks at the files that I have updated and add the documentation for the changes that I have done. Yeah, that's it. And I'm just gonna enter and Claude will create the agent for me. It will handle everything by itself. Let me go back to my four fields. So I've already shown you, the name, description. The description is actually very important. Based on the description, Claude will pick up the agent. So let's say when I said, create documentation for my changes, Claude will try to invoke doc writer because it matches with the description, and that way it knows that it needs to invoke the doc writer agent. And then the model is actually very important because in my doc writer I've chosen haiku because that's the cheaper one. It needs to go through all the changes, it needs to identify the code changes and then write the documentation. I think it's a very mechanical thing. You probably need very less reasoning over top of that because the reasoning has already been done by Opus while writing the code. And then tools, tools you need to check based on the permissions that you want to give. So now you can see that the create new agent is asking me to select the tool. So I can just say, read only, edit tools, execution tool, MCP and other tools. So yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say continue and it has everything. And now which model it is asking me. So Fable is a new one launched today while recording the video. And then Sonnet, Opus, Haiku. I'm just gonna say Haiku for this. The background color, yeah, I mean, which background color do you want to see? You might have seen the blue color strip when it was running. So yeah, I mean, you can choose whatever you want. So let's say red or maybe yellow. And now the scope, user scope, project scope, local scope. Let's say user scope. So this is the MD file that will be created. You can see here, you can review it here, and you can just press enter and it has created the agent change doc writer. So you can see that here, right? Change doc writer. And if I click escape, now if you see change doc writer, you won't see it here, right? And the reason for this is whenever you create a new agent or do any changes, you need to restart your session. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna exit this and I'm gonna clear this and I'm gonna run the Claude again. So one thing I want to make clear here is agents are not skills, right? So you can't just invoke with / command. So if I take the example of my doc writer, I can't just do doc writer here. That's not possible. What Claude does is it, based on the description, it actually matches the agent and it invokes automatically. So if I need to show you the examples, for example, if I go to agents here and if I go to the library, if I show you the new one that we created, change doc writer, if I click here and click on the view and I scroll up, you will see the examples here. So it will give us the examples when this agent will be executing. Yeah, here you can see that we have the description for the change doc writer that we created. And the examples for this is like, whenever users say that I just added a couple methods to URL shortener service, can you document them? So this is how it will be used. So this is the difference that I wanted to flag. So the agents are not invoked by slash commands. Let's just move on. So yeah, the tool limits that we already covered. So for example, the code reviewer agent, reviewer can read and not write. The important thing that we need to understand is if you don't give any restrictions, if you don't give any tool, the sub agent will inherit all the tools from the parent session. So I have already shown you one example of inherit, right? So here, if I just clear it and if I just go to the agents, you can see in the library inherit here. So what does this mean is this backend architect doesn't have any tools defined. It's gonna inherit automatically from the main session. So yeah, you need to understand this particular thing and you need to understand this inherit thing and you need to decide which tools you want your agents to use. And for my doc writer, let me just open my doc writer agent to show you. So this is my doc writer agent, which I want to show you. And you can see here the description, writes or updates documentation. And the tools are read, write, edit, glob, and grep. So it has the right access and it's a documentation writer tool. And I've mentioned when to use, what document to write, the rules for the documentation, and the final checklist it has to verify before finishing. So this is how I have written the doc writer. And now let me show you the places where they live. I think we have already covered the project level scope and user level scope. So you can put at the project level where you can basically keep that for the particular project. Only that project will have the tools available. If you try to run that anywhere else, it won't be picked up. And second is user level. So user level means you can run them on every project on your machine and just your profile. And one thing to understand is just like Claude.md, so if you have the same agent at the user level and same agent at the project level, your project level agent will win over that. So if you have same name but different configuration in the user level and project level, just like Claude.md, the project level Claude.md is preferred. Similarly, the project level agent is preferred. You need to keep that in mind. Okay, so this is the starter pack that I was talking about. You can download it. I'm gonna give it the link in the GitHub below. I don't want you to just watch this. I want you to actually go and start using them. So these are the 5 things that I want you to start using. Doc writer is very important. There are multiple ways to use these agents. You can even put cloud hooks as well. So whenever, let's say, a tool use finishes, if there's any code change, it should automatically invoke the doc writer, or however you can imagine using these agents. So it's up to you, right? So code reviewer basically will provide the code review for you. Then there's a commit writer. Generally, whenever we have code changes, we need to write a commit message. This can help you write a very clean commit message with some predefined good practices. And then there is a test writer which can write the unit test cases. And then there's a accessibility checker which can flag the issues in the front end. So you can just drop them in the .claude and agents, and by just doing that, Claude will automatically show you in the agents directory. Just restart the session and you will see all of them. On the recap, we have already seen what a second Claude is, basically a sub-agent, when to use the sub-agents and how you can actually use the sub-agent. So like, the built-ins you will generally see whenever you run anything in the Claude. But I think the real power comes whenever you start creating your own agents, which actually are based on the workflows that you want to create. And one thing that I want to show here is like, generally when you have anything which is not associated with the project, you don't need to create the agents first. You can just ask Claude to start invoking a separate a sub agent as well. So let me give you one example. Can you check if the URL shortener app is running? Yeah, you can see here I have asked it to check my app is running or not, but instead of doing it in the main session, I've asked it to use sub agent for that. So if I just enter this now, it's not going to check in the same main session. It's going to invoke a new sub agent. So you can see that it's saying me I'll spin up a sub agent to check whether the URL shortener app is running. Yeah, you can see general purpose agent is triggered now, and here you will see the agent, and under agent you will see the different tools being used. And I can just do Control B here. It'll be the background, and I can go to the agents. Now in the running, you can see one general purpose agent running, which is checking if the shorter app is running or not. How much time, how many tokens. So you can see everything. So yeah, this is how you see the running versus library. I think I've already shown you the library. And inside library, now you can see one running agent. These are the built-in and there's one running. So I can just press escape, and if I go back, you can see that it's still waiting for one background agent to finish. If you want to see what's happening, you can just click on general purpose, press enter, and yeah, you can see it's facing some problem. I'm gonna go back to the main agent. That was my point actually. You don't need to create a sub agents all the time. You can just ask Claude to spin up sub agents and it will do it for you. So yeah, and I think this was all about Claude sub agents. In the next video, I'm gonna talk about Claude Code skills and why skills are important, the distinction that you need between agent and skills. Why, at what place will you use agent and at what place will you use skills. So this is very important. And I guess people often confuse skills with agents, and they think that they just need skills and they don't need agents. So yeah, I'm gonna cover that in my next video. So I'm kind of building a practical playbook for the Claude Code users. So do subscribe my channel and stay tuned for more videos. Till then, bye bye.